The Brooklyn Nets have been at the center of the NBA world for basically all of 2022, but whether we like it or not, the Phoenix Suns are right in the middle of all of it. What does the latest with Brooklyn mean for the Kevin Durant sweepstakes and a beloved franchise icon? We'll talk about it all on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you all for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Thursday. We're everywhere. We are free for you. So hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all of the best places. We are there, and we're there every day. Today's show, guys, brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Aaron Edwards is here for his weekly visit. Aaron, Steve Nash, you've heard of him, is that right?
Yep, I'm familiar with his work.
Yeah, he was here for a few years in Phoenix, and he got fired this week. The Nets record when he got fired, I believe, was 1-5. Is that right? Let me get that completely correct. They were 1-6. So I just am going to drop this for you, and then I'll give you the floor. He lasted 7 games or less. I thought of that on the way here. I was driving home to do the podcast with you, and I was like, how do I lighten the mood? There's been way too much Nets drama and just very heavy stuff that I'm a little bummed and tired of talking about. So I was like, what can I do to lighten the mood? And then there you go. So there's your pun for the day. But how are you and how are you thinking about Steve Nash? Are you feeling bad for him? Feeling happy that he's out of this? Where are we?
I'm really happy for him. Like, it probably just seems like such a relief. What's crazy was I think we did this pod like months ago, and we were just talking about, because we were pretty much out on the KD thing, and we were just talking about something about the Nets. And I think I said something along the lines of like, yeah, just depending on who's their coach next year. And you said next year. I'm thinking about All-Star break. So congrats to you. Congrats. You called it.
I appreciate that. I unfortunately have been the guy. We've done this too many times now, and I'm anti-Steve Nash on too many fronts, frankly. I want to get myself out of that, and I feel like him not being in Brooklyn anymore and him going back to his beach house and being a socialist in his backyard with his kids feels a lot better, and he can be happy and I can be zenned out, just not having to criticize him quite as much. He'll be out of all of our minds. I have this same reputation over at Dime where I write, where I've been the guy pointing out, I actually have to give it up to Ben Golliver of the Washington Post on his old podcast at Sports Illustrated. He jumped on this really early and I started to notice it. He just hasn't been a great tactician. Like, none of this is his fault, but I don't know if he was ready to be a head coach. And so I do think from that aspect of it too, it's probably good that he gets to take a step back. I don't know what convinced him to take this job. There's a heck of a lot of talent on that team. Obviously, he got even more of it when they got James Harden, but I'm not sure he ever wanted to be an NBA head coach. He sure as heck didn't want to be in the middle of all the crap he was in the middle of here. So I think you're right. I think being happy for him is what everybody should be. I want him back because the night when he got inducted into the Ring of Honor was one of the coolest nights I've ever been at a Suns game. And I want him as a son. I want him as a son. I don't want him fraternizing with any other teams. I don't want him remembered as the guy who was an advisor with the Warriors or winning championships or a Laker or a Net. He's a son, and he can go call soccer games for the World Cup or something. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I feel like it was already doomed. Like when a couple of head case NBA players choose a guy just because he has good vibes, like I don't think that's just long term was ever going to work. It was probably going to be a cap of 3 or 4 years on I like your vibes, can you coach us? And then saying we technically don't have a coach like a year later. So I think that it was always going to be a shelf life, and he didn't really know these dudes that he was getting involved with. I think the second he realized what he was really in, I think that's when it set in that he was kind of stuck in a pretty rough situation.
Can he buy the Suns? Can we do that? I mean,
I know he's not that rich.
He can't literally buy the Suns. I think we all know that. He played in an era where they were not bringing it in that same type of way. But I don't even know if he wants to stay in basketball, but I do think it's an opportunity. Like, reclaim him. You've been on this for a while. Bring him in.
I've been saying it. The first time
bring these people back.
Yeah, the first time he comes back as a Sun, like in that capacity in that stadium, it's gonna be nuts. Like Steve Nash sitting on the Suns like floor as an old Sun, like not as a coach, not as the Warriors dude. He hasn't been able to do it in years, so it's just gonna be nice for him to be in Phoenix as a Sun at some point, I hope.
I told you I was thinking about this on the car ride home. We've all been thinking about it for the whole week if we're NBA fans at all, because it's the soap opera that won't go away. It's crazy to me, though, to think about a year and a half ago, not even. I remember, covering the Suns Western Conference Finals push and that whole postseason. And all of us, I think, at one point thought it was a pretty real possibility heading into the playoffs, definitely after Brooklyn decimated the Celtics in that first round series, that these teams were going to face off in the finals, that the Suns' opponent that year in the finals, if they were to make it, was going to be Steve Nash and the Nets. Amari Stoudemire was on that staff. I believe Mike D'Antoni was still on that staff at that time. And it's crazy how far we've come. But on that note, just the note of how quickly this all fell apart. I mean, Nash was the coach for 2+ years, but we thought they were going to be something. They very much did not become that. It's making me wonder, because I think the tactical stuff, he wasn't a great end of game, decision maker. He had some things that very much showed you he was a first-time head coach. I think you can live with all that. They were very good anyway, especially the first year. You can live with all of that. I think where it just came to a head is obviously the Kyrie stuff, Kevin asking for him to be fired. But specifically this week with Kyrie, it just makes me wonder, because I think that stuff caught him off guard. I don't think he ever imagined being in the middle of that. And even dating back, I know I made a joke about he can be a socialist. It is a very interesting article. If you go back and read, I believe it's in Vanity Fair. Chuck Klosterman, Bill Simmons' buddy, wrote a story about how much Steve Nash aspired or aligned with these leftist leaders. Very weird. But he couldn't have known he was going to be in the middle of this. It just makes me wonder, are we ever going to move past, is this just part of life in the NBA now? Like we've gone all the way past the LeBron controlling his fate as a free agent part of player empowerment, and now it's just this constantly. Like, is this just part of what an NBA head coach has to do now? Is this what the next Steve Nash has to expect? Because it feels crazy, but it also doesn't feel like it's slowing down at all.
Yeah, I think this is what it is. I think there haven't been many coaches that have been able to handle it. And even back in the old days, this stuff has kind of probably still been going on. We learned from the Bulls doc that Phil Jackson had to deal with so many different personalities, dudes angry about their contract, Hall of Famers mad about their contracts, Michael Jordan punching teammates, Rodman doing Rodman stuff. It's always been kind of a part of this. I think now that so many players that aren't Hall of Famers are also taking part in it, I think that's where kind of the difference lies. You got 6 men and just dudes that barely get any burn trying to do being empowered too at the same time, and coaches having to deal with it. And I think that's kind of where the separation lies, is dudes that aren't stars are getting caught up in this, and people probably don't like the aesthetics of that as much as seeing like Hall of Famers do it back in the day.
Who's the Bulls guard that kind of got blackballed and wasn't able to? He was on those first Dynasty
Craig
Bulls
Hodges?
teams. Craig Hodges, yes.
Yeah.
You're probably right. I mean, it has been going on. I think there's an intensity and amplification to it with social media and whatnot. Like, if Kyrie just watches the movie that's been at the center of all this and, talks about it in a locker room, people probably just roll their eyes.
Let me say, the movie is 3 hours. No way Kyrie watched it. I'm saying it right now.
I agree. He did not watch it. I want to make a point of saying right before we hit record or shortly before, he and the Nets released a statement. They're each going to donate $500,000 to the Anti-Defamation League. That quote in that statement where they announced that, to me, reiterated that Kyrie did not watch that movie. And somebody between Saturday when he got into it with Nick Friedel of ESPN and today when that statement went out, showed him, whether it was Pablo Torre's tweets or some sort of Rolling Stone recap of it, the same stuff we all have been seeing that made us all freak out. Somebody showed Kyrie, hey, that thing that Kanye sent you that you put up on Twitter or whatever the heck happened here, it's pretty awful. And he's like, wow, okay. And that quote, if you read it, you will see what I'm saying, that I think somebody reminded him introduced him to how bad this is. But no, I think you're probably right, but it kind of sucks. On the other hand, I think it makes you appreciative that the Suns, I mean, the things we've been calling drama, setting aside the Sarver stuff, which sort of does fall into this camp. But aside from that, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, these are regular basketball disagreements, like regular locker room nonsense. And the Suns don't have a lot of this. Monty Williams' job, as far as we know, he does seem to have it somewhat easy. Just a bunch of guys who want to win. We appreciate that from afar, but I can't imagine in a week like this, I bet Monty's just counting his lucky stars.
Yeah, but like we've seen with the Nets, it really could only take one person that falls. Like KD and Harden, like, yes, Harden likes to party, and every once in a while he'll just straight up disappear. But you can tell, like, he likes hooping. Like, he likes being out there playing basketball. And the extra stuff is just having fun and living the life of an NBA player, which I won't fault him for. The Kyrie stuff, and that's where they probably butted heads, because they said it was Harden and Kyrie butting heads. And I think just a dude that wasn't all about basketball in the same way as him kind of just hit him the wrong way. And I can see where Ayton at some points last year was kind of just not feeling having to go through his contract stuff and just getting bossed around by CP3 all day. So I can see how it just takes one cog in the machine to kind of mess up, and then it'll all fall apart.
Yeah, but we're seeing a hierarchy play out here where Chris Paul didn't get along with James Harden because he saw James Harden is not working hard enough. Yeah. Then there's another layer of whatever is going on with Kyrie that makes even James Harden look at you funny. So yeah, it does just take one kind of problem that can crop up, but some problems are a little worse than others. And I think Kyrie, it's fair to say, falls into that camp. But the other side of all of this is Kevin Durant, who we spent too much time, I think it's fair to say, talking about this summer. He's back. We're going to spend too much time talking about him again. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by Prize Picks. With so many daily fantasy games out there, it's very easy to know to just get lost, to just get feel like you're getting screwed. But Prize Picks has come in and they've changed the entire game. They do not use the same structure. They do not use the same model at all. What you do is you compete against the player projections that Prize Picks sets up for you. So, for instance, the Suns play the Portland Trailblazers on Friday. Let's say you wake up, you put a little money in. I'll give you a deposit code in a bit. You say, Devin Booker, he's been on a tear. He's a lock for 30. If the player projection is at 29.5, I'm going to say more than 29.5. Let's say you have Anthony Simons. You're going to go more points for him. He's basically their only offensive option right now. And let's say DeAndre Ayton does miraculously come back. You're going to go more on rebounds because they play so small. They tried to challenge him with Justice Winslow at the 5. And that's your lineup. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the Prize Picks player projections. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, and PrizePicks offers safe and fast withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app now or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports the right way. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks gives you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks puts $50 back into your pocket. So don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for that instant deposit match at PrizePicks up to $100. Okay, Aaron. So is Kevin Durant going to be a Phoenix Sun by the trade deadline? I'm just going to start there. Are we back in the middle of this this never-ending saga?
First I'm going to say no, and then I'm going to say, do we want him to be actually?
Well, tell me what you think.
I think that's kind of just the least of our problems. Like, yeah, it'll help. And I think if James Jones can really smell the blood in the water, then yeah, obviously go for it. Because Kevin Durant can't openly ask for the trade again. Like, he can't. He got the coach fired. Is that
a dare? He can't?
No. I just don't think he wants to be the dude. He wants to get embarrassed again for Josiah to be like, no. Play basketball, you signed a contract. Like, that's what Josiah did this year, and he had to do it.
But the difference this time to me, I don't see it as different. This is the same thing I was saying. If Josiah listened to Locked On Suns, he would have heard it all summer. It's been over. The minute that Kevin Durant did this, it was over. Kyrie Irving should be a Laker. That should have happened, and Kevin Durant should be a Phoenix Sun. They just decided that they were going to trick themselves into thinking this was all going to work. I did a podcast with the guy who hosts Locked On Nets for us. Very good dude, Doug Norrie. They do a great show. They've been capitalizing on all this craziness. I don't mean the Kyrie stuff. That would be insensitive for me to say. But the drama overall, they've been capitalizing on. And I literally feel like he came into that show being like, Brendon's crazy. This dude's never going to be a Sun. To by the end, I kind of had him speechless because I was like, this does not have a precedent. It's never going to work. They roll it over. They seem to think it's going to work, but here we are again, 7 games or less. It's not working. So that's the thing is I think it's less about what KD might or might not do and more about what Josiah might or might not finally realize, which is that one of his players is a liability to go off and do any number of things any day, whether it's not playing games or saying crazy stuff or fighting with the media. And his other player actively didn't want to be on this team. So what are we really doing here? They're 2-5. And I think it's the best thing for the Nets to do at this point to trade him, whether KD decides to make it public again or not.
Yeah, like I think logically they should have, because I think I even tweeted last night, like everybody smells it now. Like they know that you have to do it. They knew you had to do it a month before you knew you had to do it. So I think when the Nets were saying that they didn't like any of the offers that they were getting, they're going to hate them now. Like, I think if people know that this team is going to blow up and you might have to cut Kyrie, like people were saying, or trade him or get him out of there, like Josiah is probably not going to stand for just having a mediocre team with dudes he's paying a lot of money to. So I think that, yeah, they have to do it, but they didn't like the offers before, and they're not going to get better now that people know that you don't like, you have to do this now, and you know you have to do it now. It was different when you didn't know and we knew, and we could still offer you the bull that we wanted to offer you. But now that we all know and you know at the same time that it's over, you're going to get lowballed, and you're going to get lowballed pretty bad now.
I want to get back to what you were saying about if they need KD or not, maybe to close out the show, because with Ayton coming back, he looks fine. I think he could have played last night if it was important. Yeah. It's an interesting conversation of like, where does this offense go? What do they need? How does this kind of team continue to develop out based on the early returns from all 3 of the young guys in that starting lineup? But it looks to me like the Nets certainly think that they can still figure this out. I mean, we didn't talk about the guy that's set up to probably replace Steve Nash, which is Ime Udoka, setting aside all the drama around him. That's a win now move. You don't hire a guy who was just in the finals last year and take on all that if you don't think he's an option to help you get better and win again. They also have a lot of guys out. TJ Warren, I'm not convinced he's actually going to play. I'll believe that when I see it. It's been 2 years, but he's out. You have Seth Curry. Joe Harris is in and out of the lineup. I think what they will do is wait for those 3 guys, or at least Harris and Curry, to get healthy, potentially try to swing a move for a backup big man sooner rather than later, or another big man. They might even start that guy because they don't have an answer there right now. And then see if Simmons gets better. Because I do think it's fair to wait on Simmons. He's looked very bad. He doesn't look like he wants to shoot. His defense hasn't even been there either. But guy hasn't played basketball in like a year and a half. So we love to be hard on Ben Simmons, but I have a hard time imagining this is just who he is. I don't think they should trade Kevin Durant now. I don't think that's in the best interest of their team. I guess I'm just not super optimistic that Udoka, a 25% better Ben Simmons, and then, some healthy role players is going to turn this situation around. They just have not been good enough, no matter which way you slice it, even if you ignore all the drama that's very hard to ignore. Yeah,
I mean, Ime is a decent coach, but I'm not sure he can even fix what's going on with their defense.
Unless he can conjure up a center.
Yeah, I don't know what he plans on doing. You're going to score, and they're probably going to be more efficient than Tatum and Jalen, but you also had Marcus Smart out there. You had Grant. You had dudes that were very willing to play defense, and that's just not the makeup of this team. So I just don't know how he's going to even fix the parts that they're really terrible in right now.
And I think with Udoka, the other part is a lot of what got attributed to him as why he was so good for that group. I mean, their defense is incredible, but it also hasn't really missed a beat this year. If you watch that team, they're sometimes how they look, you're nobody's going to beat them. They're winning the title this year. And that's still true with a 35-year-old who came in with his own questions about his age and his past and whatever too. And that hasn't been a problem for them. So I'm not ready to attribute all of that to Udoka. Obviously he deserves a lot of credit, but a lot of what he was really, you could attribute to him is that he became the leader of that team. They did not have one. Marcus Smart at times tried to be that. I'm not saying he's not that, but he didn't ever really seem to get it fully. Kyrie had been that. Marcus Morris had tried to bully his way into that. Suns fans are very familiar with how that whole situation looks. And it became Udoka. And so is this roster, this group of dudes, going to let him become the leader of this team? That feels hard to imagine, especially when they've been so drama-filled, and they're going to look at him like, you're bringing more of this to us? Yeah. You know what I mean? And we're supposed to look at you as the guy who's going to rally us all together and turn everything around. That feels like a very, very unlikely set of dominoes to fall, where all of a sudden we're looking at this, and just like he did last year, he's whipped these guys into shape. I just don't think this is that team. Yeah, it's hard to no team in the NBA other than I think maybe Charlotte needs a coach that's the grown-up in the room. Because I think Steve Nash, he was the substitute teacher. I think they all knew that he had no power and that he got hired because of them. So it's kind of hard to respect a coach like that and listen to everything he says. KD won championships for Steve Kerr, and he barely even respected the play calls there. Sometimes he just wanted to spread it out and get a bucket. And now, he's on a team that had no structure and no coach that tactically couldn't do anything, and he's unhappy there too. Yeah, I'm fine with him coming here, but make a decision. Do you want to win and be a part of something, or do you just want to get buckets with a coach that you hired that has no say in anything? So that's kind of where I am with it now. It's you made these choices, and I'm not sure what kind of basketball you want to play at this point, because the winning kind you didn't enjoy even a little bit. Yeah. Let's dive into all this. I love that we're back in the middle of it. I'm not going to lie. I live for the KD talk. I live for all things Kevin Durant. He's the most fascinating dude. To me, one of the I'm not willing to say the most, one of the most fascinating guys in the NBA. Anyone who listens to this podcast, probably when they hear my vocal cords produce the words Kevin Durant, probably just smash their iPhones at this point. But we're doing it anyway. Here we go. First, today's show, guys, also brought to you by the great people at My Solar Nerd. If you live in a sunny state like ours here in Arizona, you've had people come up to your door, knock, and tell you, hey, we have free solar. We have super duper cheap, no questions asked solar panels for your house. But if you've had that happen, that they're most likely not telling you the truth. And most likely it's not actually free. But My Solar Nerd, their mission is simple: help you get the best solar system to fit your needs. The guys at mysolarnerd.com are local. They understand the nuances of going solar here in Arizona, and they believe an educated customer is a happy customer. So once you're ready, they'll put their industry knowledge to work for you by choosing the best equipment, warranties, and installers in their network. They'll also help you figure out all the credits and incentives that you may qualify for to make sure your transition to solar is as smooth as possible. And if you apply now, our listeners will get a $50 Amazon gift card when they book a no-commitment evaluation. This promotion, again, only for Locked On Suns listeners and only for homeowners. No apartment complex solar panels, unfortunately, yet. But visit mysolarnerd.com and select Locked On in the How'd You Be Here About Us section to get in on this offer. Make the switch to solar on your terms. Start your research process now by visiting mysolarnerd.com and show Locked On some love by letting them know that we sent you. Folks, going solar doesn't need to be complicated. MySolarNerd.com makes it easy. Okay, Kevin Durant is available. Deandre Ayton will be available in January. He has a no-trade clause, basically an effective no-trade clause by way of the matching of the offer sheet. The deal could happen with or without DeAndre Ayton. Kevin Durant doesn't have to go to the Suns, even if he does get traded. None of this is fate, Aaron, but I want to return to what you said a few minutes ago, which is that you're not positive that he's what the Suns need. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Because I do think the way they've started changes our views on some things. I saw somebody saying they don't even need a great Jay Crowder trade anymore because of how impressed that person was with this 6-1 start. So is that what you mean? Is it just how well they've started, or is it more of a doubt in Kevin Durant?
I think that he respects Monty enough to where it's like he would run. Like, I think it was just a Kerr thing, but I think if Monty asked him to do things, he loves Monty. And I really think that Monty as the coach, he'd be fine with running the scheme of the offense. But I just think the way we're playing right now, I like the pick and roll starting with Bridges now. I like all the stuff that they're doing, and it just seems smooth. We're scoring without Chris Paul really shooting the ball yet. And I think he's just the least of what we need. I think Jay Crowder for scoring guard, or Payne for like a scoring guard, like something like that, to where it's because we only let the Timberwolves come back when we go on those scoring stretches when the second book goes out and Lee has to kind of run the offense a little with Campaign, and Campaign can just be on or off depending on where he's off. And Jock he didn't have his best game yesterday. I think he did fine on the boards, but he just hasn't started knocking those open shots down yet. So I think just having a guard that could play make and kind of just get to the rim and score and just make everybody else better, to where Book can sit a little longer. And we're not going to be first throughout this whole season in the West. It's fun that we are right now, but the load managing for CP is going to start. And I think just having a player that can fill those minutes that's not Campaign is just going to be nice, because I'm sorry, CP3 is going to have a lot of DMPs come Christmas time.
I'll believe that when I see it, but I agree with you in general that I'm kind of nervous we're back in a win streak. Like, I just want a loss. Yeah. I always say we. It's not we. Like, I'm not saying. Okay, I have a complex about it. I don't mean we. Like, I'm saying I'm a fan of the team, but you get what I'm saying. I will believe that part when I see it. I think it sounds like you're still in basically the same position. The Kevin Durant thing in the summer was just a little bit of a distraction for you, but you are back to wanting one chucker, and you will feel like the championship roster is complete.
Cam Johnson's our chucker now, apparently. So I think the way he's shooting, and like I said, like, you can tell this offseason they were like, Cam, touch the ball, shoot it. Like, if you touch it, let it go. And
Chris Paul said yesterday that they literally have a drill called "Let It Fly," which I feel like I'm not exactly sure if Chris Paul ever participates in that drill based on how he plays, but it definitely feels like Cam Johnson has been run through that drill a few times this offseason for sure. I agree with you. I don't think you can trade Cam Payne right now as long as he's playing capably, which I would say is where he's been. Last night was ugly. I think Monty, that was more on Monty to me. But when it comes to KD, I don't think there's any way you don't explore it. We're way too far into what is supposed to be a 30-minute podcast for me to get into anything related to DeAndre.
I mean, like, yes, if you can, like Charles Barkley said on the Bill Simmons podcast, if you can do it, you have to do it. And he was naming all these people that if it's that person, give them up. If it's that person, give them up. We don't have to do that part anymore. The Nets, Marks doesn't run this anymore. Like, he doesn't have the power anymore.
I think July 1st, 2019, when Kyrie and KD signed there, I think Marks has not been in control. It's been an honorary GM. It's like when Taylor Swift got a degree from Harvard or whatever at this point. But I think I was kind of surprised that Barkley said that. It's funny, Barkley, and I love him. That interview, we talked about it last week with the Obama parts and everything else. He's been – all it took was another contract for him to be on his A game. He's been incredible so far. There's been like 2 weeks of the season. I think I was kind of surprised to hear him say that, and I don't know if he says it if the Suns win Game 6 and 7 in 2021 and there's a title. You don't trade those guys then. I think we all would say that probably, but I think this year, you mentioned Bridges briefly, the way they've started, the way he's started, that's the one thing I'm doubling down on. I feel like he's untouchable. The way they've been able to keep the defense intact with him being really the only wing defender who's like A+ or, above average consistently, and what he's growing into on offense, still while taking like no threes, which you would think that eventually comes around too, and he rounds his game out even more. He's just too valuable. And it's not only that he's so good or that he's growing, but it's also like with using him on the short roll, with letting him be even more aggressive as a defensive player. Like, they see him as part of what they're doing. Not that they ever didn't do that, but it just feels like I can't imagine this team without him. So I wouldn't do that. Like, that might sound insane as I'm laughing about Kevin Durant, making fun of you that you just want a Jordan Clarkson. I just still think he's too valuable for what they are. And I said that all the way in like the day Chris Haynes said Kevin Durant wants to go to the Suns. I was saying that. And I might even believe it more now than I did. But if you can get him for some combination of Ayton, Cam, and some other stuff, including a bunch of picks, obviously, I just think you have to do it because, yes, the stabilizing guard, you have to give up way less to get that guy, but the whole time was KD is that. KD becomes that third scorer. You can stagger these guys. You can have them balance each other out. And when you have three guys who are that amazing on offense, you just don't need a lot else besides them. When you have Bridges and you have, Bismack Biyombo as your center, like that team, it feels like it would become the favorite, and it will kind of no matter what else they have. Yeah,
that's probably true. I just think that we're running so smooth right now. It's just hard to.
Well, we said that last year. They won 64 games and they got smacked. By
but
Luka.
We also said during the summer, like, we need more out of Cam Johnson. We need more out of Mikal Bridges, and it looked like they're taking that to heart. I don't want to go into the playoffs with the bench that we have. Obviously, I can't. Like, I don't trust it. But I think
the bench will get worse if they traded for KD, right? Or anybody. Yeah. If they trade for another star, you're getting way thinner, and they're already thin.
Yeah, so I think that Book would obviously play with the second unit a lot more, but I just think with the load managing that Chris Paul's going to have to do. Yesterday, he almost got an 8-second violation. The word is out that if you press him enough during a game, like, he is his age. Like, you still, like, he's going to show it at some point. I just think that people were going to do that way more in the playoffs, and we're going to be right back where we left off. So I just think that I just really want another point guard really bad. I've just been stuck on that for a long time.
It's all a conversation for a different time because I do think the Nets are not going to press that panic button yet. And Ayton's not even available to be traded. And I don't see a version of a trade where he's not involved, especially because Cam doesn't make a lot of money. So even if he's good enough to be a pretty high value piece in a trade like that, he's not making enough to be one. So these are all things to consider. But I do think, like, just to cap this off, maybe I think they could do both. You know, like we talked about that all throughout the summer, like whatever doesn't get sent to Brooklyn for KD in terms of players, you could do a secondary trade after that. Maybe Jay Crowder doesn't like the idea of Brooklyn and he seems to, rule the roost in this organization lately. So he gets to control his fate, and then he gets sent to whatever city, and then the Suns get a guard back in that trade. You could do both.
You think he's going to make it to All-Star break?
I don't know what's going on with Jay Crowder. I thought about him a lot yesterday because Anthony Edwards does not seem to have the connection to Migos that I expected, despite growing up in Atlanta. The arena was pumping with Migos songs pregame, and you would have thought he didn't even know who that was. But I was sitting there like, Jay's from Atlanta too, and I feel like he would have cared. So I miss Jay, but I don't feel like I have a gauge or guess on any of that right now. But the bottom line is they could do both things, and I think there's multiple moves to be made here, considering they don't care about draft picks and they're all in. Like, if you want to get hyper aggressive, they could do that.
Yeah, it does seem like if James Jones, I mean, he's never really pushed the button, so I don't even know I was going to say that. Chris Paul's the only time he's ever like, do it like now. But if he finally does, just to say this team is a 1 seed going into Christmas somehow, and we could really just run away from it with this move, then yeah, I think that it'll be kind of malpractice if he does it knowing that he's just one move away from pretty much a guaranteed championship.
This season is an exact replica of last season, and it's kind of insane. We're talking about internal development from Cam and Mikal and Ayton. We're talking about a win streak. We're talking about trading for offensive help. It just feels like we are either in purgatory or Groundhog's Day or something like that. But
it doesn't seem like that much though. Like last year, we lost the finals, like comeback season. Like it was like ultra aggressive and like trying to prove something. This is just in the flow of it, and it looks so much more fun. It does look like they're just having more fun.
It's more casual this year. It doesn't feel as like they're kind of acting like they've been here before in a better way, I think. Whereas last year, I think they got ahead of themselves a little bit. But there has to be a trade. I mean, that part of this cannot be that part can't go the same, which is James Jones ignoring the trade deadline outside of Torrey Craig. So we'll see. But like I said, it could be a lot worse in the meantime if they keep piling up wins and developing and getting better and being fun to watch. Then I'm definitely not going to hear me complaining. But that'll do it for today, guys. Happy Thursday. Enjoy the wins. 2 games against Portland coming up. I'll have a show tomorrow previewing that and talking a little more about all of what is going on here in Suns land. In the meantime, go make Locked On Sports today your second listen to get caught up on everything else going on in the world of sports. That's like a 20-minute show that covers even more ground than we do across all of sports. So it gets you ready better than anything else out there. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.